Hey, this is Angelica Casares. Welcome to season 2 of the Juan Words podcast. Welcome. We're excited to be back. We took a small break.
Welcome. And your co-host, Juan Alanis.
It's called Juan Words podcast. I think people assume they would know your name.
There's a Juan involved somewhere.
Somehow, somewhere. I'm obviously not the Juan. Well, I hope people don't think I'm the Juan.
But you said we're in what?
Season 2.
We're in season 2.
Season 2 of the Juan Words podcast.
Who would have thought, huh?
Yeah. How many episodes have we recorded at this point?
I think this is going to be either 30 or 31.
Okay. Wow. So, yeah, it is 31. It should be 31.
Yeah, it should be about 31.
Or 32, 33. I don't know. We're over 30.
Not 32, 33 yet. But I think it's either 30 or 31 because but we have some of them are mini shows and some of them are long shows. So that's why I think it started adding up faster.
Yeah.
Because some of them were the short ones and the short ones you can record several at a time.
Yeah.
And you did like a bunch of them at once.
In one sitting, yeah.
Yeah. And then the long ones take us longer because we have to sit together and like do the recording. And by the time we're done, I think the most we've ever done is like 3 back to back.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, but if you were saying that it felt kind of like by the end, last one, we were kind of like burned out a little bit.
Yeah, we took a break. I have to say these, they get easier as you go along. But the problem is that you kind of, so whatever the topics you're talking about are like in the moment you're thinking about. And a lot of the times when you're thinking about the same topics over and over and over, you kind of stay with that same mindset. And so it's difficult to like, because you're on that mindset and it's difficult to think about something else that you want to record without being boring.
So what do you think is the season 2? What would you say? Like, what do you want to do in season 2? Or what do you think people should expect in season 2?
I think season 2, I want to expand. I want to keep having conversations with you. I'm definitely like, my mind has shifted at this point. I know. I want to have conversations with other people. So that's coming up. I've asked a few people if they wanted to like record with me. I mean, not come like bring them into my house, but like record via Zoom, via like a recording platform.
Yeah, it's online somewhere.
Somewhere, yeah. And so hopefully that'll take place pretty soon. And I'm excited.
Yeah. I think like season 1 we started out talking about COVID and we talked a lot about COVID. I think there were several episodes where we talked about it.
Yeah.
And I think in season 2 I want to kind of pull away from that a little bit.
Okay.
Not because it's still reality and this and that, and we may still touch on it here and there depending on how things happen. Yeah. But I think it's good to kind of pull away from it a little bit and just start talking about other stuff too.
So this podcast, I've noticed it's real life situations, real life conversation, and COVID just happens to be real life. Yeah. So it's going to be difficult it's not going to be difficult to pull away from COVID, but it is going to be, I don't know, like I do want to keep having conversations, like, but the thing is that I think during this COVID pandemic, we learned a lot about ourselves. We learned a lot about like the world. We learned a lot about other people. That's enough learning.
We can go back to normal now.
I don't see that funny at all.
No,
I don't see how that's. What do you mean by that? Please be specific. What you just said
about
going back to normal.
No, I said that's enough learning. I'm like I can go back to normal now.
Normal as in what?
Like before pandemic.
I don't know what that means. Say when you say normal, what do you mean by normal? Like you want to go back to like the way life was before the pandemic?
Yeah, I kind of feel like I miss life before the pandemic.
No, I understand you miss it.
But look, here we go talking about the pandemic again.
No, I'm sorry because I don't know if I'm getting upset.
What are you getting upset for?
Because I feel like you're saying that it's enough of us like being like here in this pandemic and like let's move on from it.
Like what? Like Trump? I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not saying
not necessarily
I'm not saying
Trump.
What Trump is saying. I think
but
you're taking it out of context.
I think I am, but it sounded like what you said.
Like, I'm tired of being in this social distancing. I'm tired of being in this uncertainty of not knowing, and I'm ready to go back to normal.
You see, you're still saying the same thing. Okay, so I'll move past it. You understand what you're saying, and I hope that if somebody calls you out on it, you can clarify it.
That's fine. Call me out. I'm ready for it.
Oh, shit. Oh, my God. Okay. So I wanted to today have a quick conversation with you. Like I said earlier, we did we took a break. A very much needed break. And today,
from the podcast or from what?
I guess from being like the creative space for a moment, like not really thinking about the podcast, not really thinking about like what we're gonna do and how because we're always, I feel like as us, Juan, that we don't really depend on like the way our income comes into the household. We really don't depend on like we're our own employer, right?
What do you mean?
Okay, so I'm trying to get somewhere with this. So what I'm trying to say is that we
don't have outside jobs. We work for ourselves.
Correct. And so a lot of the times I feel like our mind is always on what's next. What do we need to do? What do we need to do to keep going, to make sure that we sustain ourselves, right? A lot of that is, for me at least, it's how can we be creative? How can we step out of our comfort zone? Like always looking to see, always like checking in with myself to make sure that I'm not following the trend, that I'm not doing certain things. And if I am following the trend, why am I following the trend? What am I doing with it? And how am I how I'm stepping into the world and still being mindful of everything else, cognizant of like the world, right? And so I feel like a lot of the times we're always on, right? Even when we go to sleep, sometimes we'll lay in bed and we'll talk about work. We'll talk about the next project, the next thing that's coming up, what the next week is going to look like. I think we're always there. And we don't go into a workplace, and the last workplace we ever went to was the office that we had, and there was only a few people in there, and it was the same people that we would talk to. Or when you would go to meetings, you would talk to like other people. And I feel like now, like we solely depend on each other to really have those in-depth conversations, right? And so I don't know.
I was never having in-depth conversations outside of here anyway. That's,
you don't think you were?
I am.
No?
I don't ever, okay. I hardly ever have in-depth conversations.
No, but you were stimulating by having like even service conversations with other people.
Yeah, like service conversations and just like talking about day-to-day things, or getting to know other people, or just like hearing about other people's lives. Yeah. But like in-depth conversations, no, I've never really been one. I've never really been a person to have like in-depth conversations with a lot of people. But
would you say that you sufficed with those conversations, that you didn't feel like you were missing out on anything when you would come home? Like even sometimes, would you say you felt like you were overwhelmed for the day and you were like kind of done, and you would go into this lapse of like, okay, I'm just gonna step away? And I remember you doing that often. And it was yesterday that I watched you just kind of, because I noticed Becky like laying up the way she usually does. And then I looked over to the sofa and I seen the back of your head, and you hadn't moved for a while.
No, that's not true. I had moved.
Oh, okay. No. And I don't mean that as a bad thing.
No, I'm saying I had moved.
Okay, here's what I'm trying to say. Is that I didn't see you move. And usually when you kind of just sit down to decompress, like that's your way of doing things, where you just zone out and you just let the day take you away. Whether that's whatever you're watching on TV, or you put some reality TV on, and then you kind of just ease into it, right? And it had been a while that I hadn't seen you actually do that. That was about the third time that I've seen you do that within the last 4 months. And I was like, oh, okay. So I think he's starting to get into a routine, a way of life here. And I was like, oh, like, okay, I think we're figuring this out. I think we're figuring out like our actual new normal. It's not what it used to be, right? It's definitely not what we expected, but it's definitely like what you're doing, you know? It's just, we're finding our way around it. And so with that being said, I think, I have shifted, like I said earlier, and I feel like I was telling you earlier when we were taking a drive that I've gone into my head. I've gone into depths of thoughts, right? In my own headspace, and I'm revisiting the way I used to think and why I thought the way I thought about specific moments, times in my life. I don't know, and I feel like I've always wanted to talk. When I talk to people, when I interact with people, I've always wanted to come from a place of understanding, of being empathetic. And I feel like I don't know, like I kept feeling like maybe that wasn't something that I was getting, And so I kept trying to be what I wasn't getting myself. I struggled. I don't know if it's because of like what's happened. I don't know if it's that I've struggled. I feel like I struggled with maybe some relationships, I remember at the beginning when I started going through depression, like I was always fighting with my mom. And I remember confronting her about a lot of things. And then we were laying in bed last night, and I was kind of explaining to you. Well, no, in the morning. And I was explaining to you like what that was like, kind of, sort of. Why I don't know, but that's where I'm going again, right? So, but this time I'm not depressed. I'm not anxious. I'm just here, and I'm like, I'm self-aware. And I'm like, I mean, mind you, I'm not like enlightened. Like, I'm not like, oh.
But
like,
you're self-aware about what?
I'm self-aware of myself, of what I'm saying, how I come across, how I feel, what I feel, and who I feel about what.
Okay.
And so with that, I have to say that in the past, I was always afraid. So I read when we read the last book that we discussed, there was a portion of the book that has like stuck with me, and it's just part of my everyday thought now. And I think the verbiage was something along the lines of like, you never fear or be embarrassed or shamed. That feeling is never gonna, like, you should never feel like, not that feeling's never gonna go away, or you should never feel like that, because it's always gonna be there.
What feeling?
Like fear, shame, and embarrassment. And so, but those three words have stuck with me for this last round of like intuitiveness. Of like, I ask myself often now, when I think about something, I ask myself, am I fearing that? Am I embarrassed by that? Or is it shameful about that? And I revisit that. I revisit the thought. And so I'm like, I reached out to some people, and I want to have some conversations that I was afraid of having. I want to talk to them about how, not necessarily how I feel like personally, but how I feel, well, obviously how I feel personally, not like that, but why maybe not the turmoil, but maybe the issue between the friction between the relationship that I have with me and that person might be an issue. And so I'm kind of there, right? And my mind has been there lately.
Okay.
Yeah. I went down that road because I there's a few things.
It was a long intro, but where were you, like, where you're saying that your mind is like, you're analyzing yourself? Is that kind of what you're saying?
I'm being analytical? Yeah, probably, partially. Yeah, I would say so. But I did. I'm gonna revert to my phone the way I usually do. I'm gonna open my notes.
Oh, but before you go there,
Okay.
what is it that you're trying? Like, what is it that you're talking about? Like, in a like quick
nutshell. I think this is with the way the feeling of the season 2 is gonna be. It's gonna be a lot of diving in deep, and I hope to cover conversations that maybe other people maybe they think about. I know one of them is one of the conversations that I hope.
Your topic is what right now that we're talking about is what? Shame,
fear, embarrassment, and shame.
Fear, embarrassment, and shame. That's what we're talking about.
Is that what we're going to talk about?
Yeah.
Partly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's this is going to be very much the feel of the way season 2. I hope it goes. Who knows? We might veer off. But well, I have a question. What do you think of fear, shame, and embarrassment, or how do you define it?
I just go by Webster's dictionary. I don't really have like I don't know. Like, I don't really think about the definition too much myself. Like, I think I just like, fear is something you're scared of. Like, what was the other one?
Yeah, I just told you. Fear, Embarrassment and shame.
Yeah, embarrassment is just something that you don't like. You're like, you don't want other people to know, or you don't want people. You don't like. You're like, you want to keep to yourself, or you don't want out in the open. And shame is just something that you did that you don't want somebody to like, other people to know about.
Yeah.
Or if people find out, then you're embarrassed about it.
Yeah. So I want to talk about fear, shame, and embarrassment. Kind of the way it correlates with the relationship I have with my parents. But before I do that, I want to ask you, would you say, okay, there was a moment, do you remember this one? There was one time that you woke up in the middle of the night screaming.
Screaming?
Yeah, kind of.
Remember that?
No, not scream. Well,
like I was yelling?
You're not yelling. You were like in disarray. Like you were like, you got up like in a hurry. Like there was a panic.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember that? You were like tossing and turning, and I woke you up. Juan.
I don't remember that. Like, okay, I have a bad memory. I don't remember this stuff.
Okay, here, I'm going to say this, and this is going to trigger you. I woke you up, and you slapped me.
I remember I slapped you, but I don't remember
you slapped me.
I wasn't running around anywhere.
No, you weren't running around. But you woke up in the middle of the night. Well, you scared me because you were like in your sleep, and you were like making these like noises. You're like, no. And I was like, Juan, you okay, Juan? And I like try to shake you awake a little bit to like, because you like looked distraught. And when I woke you up, you looked at me and like you were wide-eyed, and then you just hit me like across the face. Do you remember that dream?
I don't remember.
You remember what happened?
I don't remember what I was dreaming, but I think it's like that's what they say. You're not supposed to wake somebody up when they're like having a bad dream.
Shut the hell up! Is that so? You hit me because I woke you up? What is that?
Not that people are gonna hit you, but I think it's just.
So what are you trying to say with that?
No, that's what it's like a thing where people say if somebody's like if somebody's like sleepwalking or something, you're not supposed to wake them up. You're just supposed to like guide them.
Guide them? You weren't sleepwalking. You were distraught in your sleep.
But it's kind of the same thing, no? Like you're like you're kind of like you're in your subconscious, so you don't want to wake that person up.
I see. So I deserve to get smacked because I woke you up.
When they're in their subconscious, like you shouldn't wake them up. That's what, at least that's like an old wives' tale that I've heard.
I'm so confused. I think you're making it understand that I got hit. Like, good for me for getting hit because I woke you up.
You're making it.
What the hell?
No, you're making it sound like I like hit you.
Like, no, you did hit me pretty hard.
Okay.
You did hit me, and I remember what happened. Because I woke you up, and I remember afterwards because I was stunned by the hit. Like you hit me pretty hard, and I was like, whoa. I was like, what the hell? And I was mad, and you were scared. Like the next day, you were like apologizing, like you didn't know what to do. You got on the internet, you started looking up what happens, like why somebody would do that. And I think you came across an article that said you have to be careful because sometimes people in their sleep like do some really crazy things, like not knowing. And I asked you, I said, well, what happened? Like what happened that you got up like that and you were so like afraid? And you're like, well, you were like, no, I don't know. And like, you didn't want to tell me. And then after a while, I was like, can you just like, I got hit. Like the least you can do is tell me why the hell you hit me or what was going on in your dream that you were so scared of or that you were so afraid of.
But I don't know if I was afraid because I don't even remember what I was dreaming.
Okay, well, I remember. You told me that you...
you remember what I was dreaming?
Because you told me.
Okay. And then?
Okay, so you told me that your dad... that your dad was like was fighting with one of your younger sisters, and that he was grabbing her, and that he was hitting her, and that you were approaching him, and that you were trying to get him to stop, and you were afraid that he was going to hurt her, and that's why you just kept yelling and yelling in your sleep. And so when you woke up, you thought I was your dad, and you hit me. And I was like, this is what you told me. I remember this so vividly because I'm the one that got smacked.
Okay, if you say so, but I don't remember that at all.
You don't remember that at all? and you hit me across the face because you thought I was your dad, and I was like, what the hell? But I was like, why was he so, I don't know, like, you were so, like, there was a fear there that you were gonna, that something was gonna happen, that you found it like within yourself to like wake up in the middle of the night, and like the first person you seen, you thought it was gonna like harm you and hurt you. Well, for the most part, do you remember hitting me?
Yes, I already said that. Yes.
Okay.
But what's the point of this?
What's the point of the story?
Yeah.
That's the only time that I've ever seen you really scared over something like that, or like over like somebody harming somebody else to the point where you felt like you had to defend somebody, and it was only in your sleep. And so I wanted to ask you, like, is that not that instance, but the only time I've ever seen fear in you was when you woke up in the middle of the night, where you were so scared and you got up and you were like shaking and you were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I can't believe this. Not only because of what happened, but because of what you were dreaming. So you were in the middle of two things. You were so overwhelmed with your actual dream, and then you were so like concerned about what you actually did in physical life, like when you woke up. And I think you couldn't see, like normally you're the calm person, you're the person who's very patient, you can see beyond the situation, which then makes you relaxed and makes you like be very aware of what's happening and stuff like that. And so that's the only time I've ever seen you, but within you, that calmness. Do you ever fear anything?
Do I ever fear anything?
Yeah. I mean, is there...
That was a long-winded way to share a story that had nothing to do with asking me that question. And now you're like, do you ever fear anything? You could have just asked me that without sharing that long story. But do I ever fear anything? Like, I don't know. Everybody fears something.
That's an asshole thing to tell me. That's a long way to saying things. Because I thought you were going to remember.
You're saying the story like now it sounds like I abused you, like I slapped you across the face, and like I was aiming to hit my dad, and I really hit you, and I'm like, what? Where are we going with this story?
Okay.
I don't know. It just seems random, but no.
Well, there's that.
Everybody has fears. Everybody has fears, but what do you mean?
Well, with that story, what the point of that was, I thought I was going to get you to a place where you remembered it, and because there was a real concern over that moment, and I didn't know that you completely forgot about it.
No, we haven't talked about it ever since it happened. I've never I don't remember that story. I remember the act of like waking up and like hitting you, and I remember that. But I don't remember I don't remember what I was dreaming. I don't remember why it happened. I don't remember any of that.
I thought I was going to revisit the moment of you, like the way you felt and why you felt that and why there was such fear in it.
But I don't remember.
Okay, well, now I know. But shit, man, you're sitting here calling me out like I'm fucking just like blabbing. It's a real thing. It's a real event. It's what actually happened. And I thought you remembered why you would happened.
Oh, I'm just saying.
So I'm like, okay, well, if he doesn't remember that, well, can I ask you then? Like, what do you fear then? Like, how can you recall the moment where there was an actual fear? Like
as an adult?
Whenever.
I don't know. Like, there's just different moments, I think, where you can have fear. Like it can be anything. Like, I mean, I think
obviously.
I mean, I think the clearest like memory that I've had recently where I actually feared something was, I don't know if you remember this, but one day we were in the room and we were just laying in the bed, and I happened to be looking around the room, and then I just told you, I was like, one of these days, this is gonna be all over. Yeah. I'm like, this is gonna be, because I see like you like to do things very specifically, like you like to organize things, you like to decorate
in the room.
And so I look around at the wall and I'm like, oh look, she painted that wall pink and white. She put all these different art pieces on the wall, and she organized like all her jewelry in a certain way. And then, those are the little things that you're like, that's what makes you you. And so one day, like, you think about, that's not gonna be the truth anymore, or that may not be there. Yeah. And I think the context of it was that, it was after my dad had passed away, your sister had passed away. Yeah. And then I think we were just both in a very like, somber kind of state of mood. And I really felt fear that time. Like, I felt like, I was like, man, like, what would happen? Like, how would that be? Like, that, how is that gonna? So that was a time that it felt like I was afraid, and to the point where it wasn't like something tangible, like be like, oh, I'm afraid of that person, but it was scary enough that it made me like start crying, because I was like, I wasn't intending to cry, and I don't like to cry, and I really don't like to cry.
No, you hate it.
And it just made me like tear up a little, because I was like, oh, like, like things go by so quickly, like, and one day all of this is going to be a memory. And so to me that was scary.
Yeah, no, it's not. Well, that's nice to say that all of this is going to be a memory, but it's going to be a memory to us, and those memories die with us. You know what I mean? And it is scary. It is scary. And I knew exactly the way you were feeling when you looked around and you're like, man, this is not going to be here one day. And I knew immediately. I think we had both experienced a really big loss in our lives. You had lost your dad, and I had lost my sister not a year later. And it was...
and that was one, I guess, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but...
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I guess the other time was recently when when I went to the doctor, and they were like, oh, you might have something in your head. And I was like, oh.
You might have. You have to say what happened. You have something in your head. What?
No, so they thought that I had they thought there was something wrong with my, something like...
So you had went to the doctor because you were doing push-ups.
I went to the doctor because I was getting headaches, and I was getting like shocking headaches, and so I was like, this is not normal. Let me go to the doctor. And I never want to go to the doctor. It's not like I never volunteer to go. So I was like,
you didn't tell me anything. So you just said you were getting headaches.
So I was like, okay, if this is scaring me to the point where I need to go to the doctor, I was like, okay, let me go to the doctor.
Yeah.
So I went, and they wanted to do an MRI. They wanted to do a CT scan. They wanted to do all these things, and at first I was like, yeah, whatever, it's like nothing. But then once they started like putting me on these machines and this and that, I was like, okay. I'm like, this is a little scary. Like, what if I'm like when you do a CT scan, they have to put an IV on you, and I've never had an IV put on me, and I was like, okay,
so
this feels weird. So
the IV is it's what is it called? The thing that they put in you?
I don't know.
A dye. It's a dye that they put into your blood.
They put a dye. Hey, I'm Juan Alanis.
And I'm Angelica Casares.
And this is the Juan of Words podcast.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and juanawords.com.
If you like this episode, please leave us a comment or a review. We would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye.
Long story short, is nothing serious, and I don't want to go into the details of everything, but that was a scary moment, that I was like, oh crap, because it was like one of those things where I was like, if this is something serious, then this could be this. I have to get used to like coming to the doctors, and I know, and I saw that with my dad, so I was like, I don't want, I was like, man, I feel like I'm too young to be like
doing that,
going through this right now. And I was like, imagine all the things that you haven't done, or all the time that you've spent that you haven't like really like gone after the things that you want. And then I was like, okay, this is like real shit right now. This is like scary stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess that's a more recent one.
That was scary shit, because you got the phone call when we were at so we needed clothes because we're spending a lot of time at home. So a lot of the clothes that we wear out, we're not wearing any right now. Like the more structured clothes, so we need a lot of like flowy, like comfortable clothes. And so we ended up at JCPenney because they were having like a deep discount, and we were there like shopping and getting few things, right? And then you get the phone call, and we're at the shoes, and you're like, yeah, and my heart just started pounding. Like I was like, I couldn't breathe, and I was like, fuck, oh my god, what happened? Oh no, like. And I was standing in line. I was like just rocking myself back and forth. I was like, okay, calm down, Angelica. If you show him you're afraid, you're scared, he's gonna freak out too, and this is not gonna be a good thing. This is not gonna be good.
But do you really think I would be the type of person to freak out?
I've never seen you freak out, and I've never seen that be you
I think the only time you've like experienced me,
I remember, yeah,
lose control was when my dad was getting really bad and it was getting really exhausting on all of us. Intense. Yeah. That was the only time you saw me break down.
Yeah, I did. I seen you break down a few times, and then once where you actually were outwardly breaking out, not where you internally where you break down and I watch you in a corner, kind of just turn away and just feel the things you feel. But there was a moment where I like it was intense, and my sister was going through cancer herself, and so I watched your dad like passing away. I couldn't take my mind off of my sister. You know, she was fine, but like her cancer had progressed, and I knew that she was in those stages, you know, that she could potentially at any moment be in those stages. And so I couldn't take it, and I left for a moment, and you called me and you're like, where are you at? And I'm like, I'm so sorry, like, okay. And like I tried, you know, and I tried, and it was intense. It was intense.
Yeah,
it was
but
intense.
that's what you think about, is like you go back to like that intensity, and like, you know, you get flashbacks of all those things that, you know, you have seen, like when somebody's sick where they like, need medical attention constantly, and that's what you go back to. So when you came out of the store, you were like crying, you were like teary-eyed, and you were like and I was like, what's wrong? And you were like, what happened? And I was like, nothing. I was like, and I was like, and I
You're
told
fine.
you,
yeah.
I told you, and you were like, okay. And I was like, it's just one of those things that, you know, it's like, that's scary. But I think we're veering off the conversation a little bit.
That's okay. That's okay. I think I think that it tends to be like a mild form of like what is that when you like PTSD? I think it's like a mild form of like, you know, that whole things that we went through. And any bad news is bad news. Anything that we fear, like we immediately go to the immediate like the worst thing right now. And that's where we're really I don't know, you know. And I wasn't prepared to hear any bad news, and I just like I looked at you, I was like, what happened? And like I was waiting for it, you know. I was preparing myself for it. The thing with me is my knees buckle under me, and so I tend to like kneel a lot or sit because I start to get dizzy and stuff. And then when you were fine, I was like, I need to sit down because I don't know if I'm gonna faint on you right here in the middle of this parking lot. So, but yeah, that was intense. There was a lot of fear there at that moment for both, especially you. But I feel like you're my rock, and so every time I see you, I don't know, when my boulder moves, I question why it's moving. And so yeah.
But yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
When you get older, I guess that's what happens, right?
I feel like we're still young. I feel like we're not that old. What is that? What are you doing? Shaking your head? Yes.
I'll take that. But
but we're only and it's
no. I think we're not that old. But I mean, we're not like you know, we're not in our 20s anymore.
We're not spring chickens. I mean, we're mature.
That's different. You know, it's like you don't like when you're in your 20s. Like you don't have to worry about a lot of these things because you're, you know, like you're healthy. You're, you know, even if you
semi-healthy, yeah.
Even if you do like you smoke or you drink or, you know, this and that, like it doesn't. And that's one of the things like I did. Like I smoked a lot, and now they're like, you can't smoke anymore. And I was like, okay, well, it's a good thing I quit. But yeah, they're like, no, you literally cannot smoke. I was like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So, oh, that's thunder outside. It's about to rain. Okay. So, like I said earlier, I wanted to touch on the conversation about like the relationship. I don't know if you want to jump in and you talk about a little bit about like the relationship that you had with your parents. But I just I like to touch on it just because I think it's worth mentioning. I think it's an understanding into who I am. Yeah. And I definitely want to record this, you know, whenever I want to listen back to it also for myself. Okay. So I've always heard this term, like daddy issues. What are daddy issues, Juan?
Yeah, I don't know, because I don't have daddy issues, but isn't that that like it's a thing where girls have like daddy issues, so they like look for guys that remind them of their dad, or who play the role of their dad?
Kind of, sort of, yeah. Like they have tough relationships with males because they don't know how they didn't deal well with their male role models, or they didn't have any male like
their father
figures in their life.
More than anything, it's a father figure, not necessarily just male figures, but the father figure. Yeah,
so either your real father or like somebody like family related who interpreted like that feel that role of your father, right? And I've always heard this term my entire like since I was a teenager, like daddy issues. And most recently, one of my friends started, she like said it, and she said it like once or twice, and I was like, what does that mean? Like I know what that means, but I was like, why? I was like, does everybody think who didn't have the best relationship with their father have father issues? And I got to thinking, and so again, like I said earlier, right, at the beginning, that I've been going back into like mindsets, right? What my mindset was like back in my 20s, 30s, early 20s, even into my teens. And then I started to set things up and correlate them in timelines. So by the time my mom had me, I had older siblings, and then like they were pretty old. Like I think my oldest sister was like maybe 13, 14. And then my brother maybe must have been like 10 or 8 or 9, or I don't know. And so they were much older than me. But my sister, who passed away, is Erica, she was 2 years older than me. So I got to spend a lot of time with her, not necessarily my siblings. So growing up, my mom decided to kick my father out of the house when I was maybe about 3 or 4, and I don't have early memories of him at all. Like I told you, I think the earliest memory I had of him was he owned this really big Buick, and I knew it was his, and I knew my father was this guy that would come around the house and like drop off groceries or give us money and stuff like that. But I never got to know my dad, like know him. Like I don't remember living with him. And so I I knew he was my dad, and so the only other person that could have possibly been like a father figure to me would have been my stepdad, which he came into my life when right before I was going to go into kindergarten. No, right before I was going to go into first grade. So by the time my dad left when I was like 3 years old, by the time I went to first grade, he came into my life, and he was a really young guy. But even then, he wasn't like my father figure. He was like my mom's husband. And so I never really got to know my dad. Every now and then I got to know him a little bit, but the more as I grow up, I hear about him more through stories of other people. It's never that he sat down with me and told me about himself. And I remember telling you also, Juan, that I figured, like, I accepted who my dad was. Okay, so my dad has always lived in the same neighborhood that I did, and I only would see my dad a few times a year.
Right.
And that was because I either looked for him or he needed something and he would come look for us. And then I would even see him like at stores and be like, hey, he's like, hey, how are you doing? Good. Or you're doing good? Yeah, I'm okay. And then we'd be on our merry way. I'd be like, okay, well, bye. And it was like not really a long conversation. Like we have never gone to a restaurant to sit down and talk. Like we've never done any of that. And I've never expected any of that from him. I remember I used to confront my mom when I was younger and be like, I want my dad in my life. And she'd be like, what do you want me to do? Like, if he doesn't want to be here, I can't help it. Like, if he doesn't want to be in your life, I can't force him. And I would blame her for it, right? Then. And when I became like of age of like 13, 14 or 15, like I just accepted who he was. He was an alcoholic who just, maybe he has mental health issues. he has an addiction, and it's just who he is, and I've accepted that. And so come like 13, 14 and around that age, I just that it was who he was. And I never had a father figure, and I never expected one in my life, because I don't necessarily know what that means or what that felt like up until I had Edgar. And that's when oh my God, am I gonna cry? That's when I needed help. Right. And I very much leaned in on my aunt, and she was married, and she had 2 daughters, and they're humble home and beginnings, and very strong women. And her husband just kind of like let things happen. Right. He didn't oppose to me spending time there with her. He kind of like, along with her, like took me under their wing to make sure I was okay, to make sure my son was okay. I leaned in on them. And that's the only time I've ever like had like a semi father figure, was my uncle. Okay. Not even my stepdad, like not even my mom's husband. Like that was my mom's husband. Like that had nothing really to do with me. They kind of kept the household up, but it was never like, there was never any like I don't know, like where he took an interest, you know what I mean? And so, and I didn't care. Like I didn't care. I also had a brother, but my brother wasn't necessarily in my life either. Like he had his own things going on, and I didn't expect that out of him either. And even now I don't expect that out of him. But I see the male, like I never seen a male as a role model for me. Like I always looked to women to teach me, to tell me, to show me the way of life. You know, like I've always done that, because I never had like, there was like men were men, but women were like women. Like that was the place I went to seek mentors, to seek guidance, and you know, so they can I show me the way, enlighten me type of situation. And so I was like, okay, is that daddy issues? Like where I don't see men, like, and I was like, I don't think I have daddy issues, because I don't know. And so I don't know, what do you think? Not about myself, but like,
I don't know, like I think it's normal to not, like I think in general, like not that it's normal, but I think for a lot of us that you can relate that you don't, even if you have a dad in the household, sometimes you don't have the closest relationship with your father, because because as men we don't show as much emotion, and we don't like I want to use the word coddle. It's not the right word, but we don't coddle the kids as much as the women do. You know, I think like even today when we were having a conversation and you were saying like that you've had all these conversations with Edgar already, and I was like, I don't have those conversations with him, like because I don't know. There's like, not that I don't want to, but I feel like it just doesn't, like, whether it's my like mentality, whether it's my like the way I grew up with my dad, and there was never that like, me and my dad never went to a restaurant to sit down and eat together either. Because there was,
but you grew up with him in your household.
Yeah, I grew up with him in my household, but I think in general, like, it's normal for people to have, not normal, but like it's probably more often than not, you will find people who will say that they were never as that close to their dad as they were to their mom, because mothers are just more loving, I think, in terms of.
You don't think men are loving?
I think you can be loving too, but I think it's not the norm. I keep saying norm, but it's not the thing that you most often see. So
it's not typical.
Yeah, I remember like there was a song that I think it was a Reba song, and it was about the greatest man I never knew, lived right down the hall. And I remember one of my sisters really liked that song because she thought about my dad.
Yeah.
Because it was like, even though we grew up with my dad always, like, you know, he was a quiet type. He didn't express his emotions very openly. And so I think, you know, I don't know if that's daddy. I guess where I'm going is to say that, you know, even with that, like, even if you had a dad at home, you could still have daddy issues.
Yeah. So, you can. Yeah. I mean, because your dad can live at home and he can still be like, it could be really a struggle. Y'all can butt heads on certain things, or y'all can just like not talk. You know, but I've never experienced that. I never experienced somebody. Well, no. I experienced it with my stepdad, but that's not the relationship that I was seeking to have. Like, I never, like, even after my mom like divorced him, or that everything that happened, I think I was mad at him for leaving my mom, but I was never mad at him. Like, I no lo extrañé. I didn't like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to, like, I'm not going to look for him. Like, I didn't call him. Like, I'm not like, where are you at? Like, you just left me. Like, it was my mom's husband. But I think the person that I would chase, and I did this before, was my uncle. And that's how I knew that I sincerely and deeply cared about him. I think there was a falling out between my mom and my aunt and my uncle over something, and I wasn't gonna say anything, and then I was like, no, I have to say something. And I went over there. I was like, what? I was like, I told them like how I felt, and because I cared about them, because I didn't want them to have issues with my mom, because I needed them in my life, and I needed them to be okay with my mom. But I've never been compelled to do that for my dad or my stepdad. But it was my uncle who I was like, please don't do this. Like, please don't like fight with my mom. Please don't make it difficult for us to get along. Like, I need you to be there for me. And in order to be there for me, I need you to like, just, whatever fight y'all having with my mom, please figure it out, because I don't want this to be an issue for me. And that's when I knew, like, oh, like, I think I see you as like my, like, I see you as the person who I feel who has taken care of me.
So you don't think that you have any daddy issues also? No, I'm saying, is that what you're saying? Like, you don't feel like
no, I don't feel like
have any.
I never felt like there was anything missing from my life. Yeah, and so but with that being said, I have mommy issues. I struggle with the relationship that I had with my mom.
I think it's a tough thing to say that, because I think that at different phases in your life, things can be like, things matter more or less to you, like, because for whatever reasons, like, I think in different times in your life, things can matter more or less. So I think, maybe it's not that you didn't miss it, but maybe it's like down the line, you may feel differently about it in a way, don't you think? Like, do you think that's possible, that you could feel differently about it one day?
Maybe, but to this moment now, and I'd like to get to know my dad. I mean, he is genetically like attached to me, so I would like to get to know who he is. And that's only if it happens. That's not something that I feel like I would force. That's something if I feel like I'm not trying to be a bitch, but if I have time. And I told you this when I first brought up the conversation with you, like a couple of days ago. When I think about my life and I think about my world, and when I think family, I think me, you, Edgar, my mom. Sometimes the order changes. Sometimes it's mom, Juan, Edgar. Sometimes it's Edgar, Juan, mom. Sometimes, you know what I mean? Sometimes that's my core, and that is where I will pour my energy into. That's where I will suffice, and I will drain myself when it comes to my family, which is you, Edgar, my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And if it ever allows, if life allows for it and a time permitting, if I get to know my dad, then of course I would like to get to know him.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, my world is somewhere else.
Yeah. No, I mean, the only reason, and the only reason that I've told you before, like, that I bring it up is because I feel like, for me, like, I feel like in my own relationship with my dad, like, I feel I had, like, I kind of held back because there was things that the way we had grown up, there were some bad experiences,
Mm-hmm.
where I was like, I kind of felt like I had a resentment towards him for a while.
Yeah.
And I held back from doing a lot of things with him. And now, like, I wish that I wouldn't have held back because, I'm like, what would have been possible? So the other day on Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
somebody contacted me, one of his friends. So my dad used to work as a roofer.
Okay.
And he would take me sometimes I would go to the roofing company. In the summers, my mom would get on his case to take us to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so he would take us, and he wouldn't,
for experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he would leave us at the warehouse, cleaning the warehouse, so that we didn't have to go in to clean the roofs.
Uh-huh.
But the guy that one of the guys that he worked with was this big stocky guy, and his name was Alberto. And Alberto, I just remember, like, I remember him and physically. And I remember one time we went to his house and we had, like, he was having a barbecue, and I remember he served us burgers. We never went to people's houses like that we didn't know that were family. So I remember that. And
so he must have meant a lot to your dad.
So I think they were good friends.
Friends, yeah.
So the other day, like, on Facebook, his wife reached out to me and was like, "Hey, we saw you on the news, and my husband remembered you, and he wanted to, he wants to get in contact with your dad." And
really?
And I was like,
holy shit.
And I was like, thank you, this and that. And I was like, well, you know what,
wow.
my dad passed, but I really appreciate you guys reaching out and thinking about him. And and now, like, I want to go meet him, mm-hmm. to, like, just hear stories about my dad, like, about their friendship and what my dad was like as a friend, and, like, just the experiences that they had together, because obviously he remembers him fondly.
Yeah, like, he was a comrade, he was a work buddy. Yeah.
So I'm like, I would like to, like, now I'm like, it's been on the back of my mind, and I'm like, I want to go and talk to him,
get to know your dad through him,
and just, like, hear about my dad.
Yeah.
And, like, I think that would be fulfilling. I think it would feel nice. And so, I think that's why I say, like, sometimes you can let things get, like, sometimes you can let things fester, and it doesn't, at the end of the day, does it really make sense for them to fester that long, as opposed to just, like, being like, you know what, let's just put the past behind us and move forward.
Yeah.
And so that's why, to me, it's like, when we've had this conversation before, I'm like, well, the past is what it is.
Yeah.
You can't always change that. But what you can do is, like, now, like, I
think your dad had the fortunate experience of being able to change, mm-hmm. in his lifetime.
Yeah.
I don't know what it must have been, whether he recognized or whatever, but he changed, based on the past experience that you talked to me about, and seeing him, mm-hmm. when I knew him, for that longevity of time, and seeing him play with the kids, and seeing him the person he was now. And I was like, I don't see it. I see him. Mm-hmm. Right. And
I think that's the thing, is, like, sometimes it's so easy to keep somebody in that place where you
mentally,
like, how you remember them being.
Yeah.
Even if, like, they're different now, like, it's easy to, like, just, think about, like, those past memories and those bad things that you have, like, that you bring up, and then you're like, oh, like, okay. And, like, it's hard to, like, when you don't make an effort to do it because you're like, oh, you know what, I'm not gonna do it, I'm just not gonna do it. And then later you're like, man, kid, terco, like, why couldn't I just, like, why couldn't you just, like, be like, okay, like, give him a chance, like if he's showing you that if he's been different, he's done different, don't be such a hard ass, And so to me, that's like, I think it would have been nice to just have like a closer relationship to my dad.
Yeah.
So, that's why I say that.
Yeah. I think that the situation with my dad, Juan, is that he's always been the person he's been my entire life. Mm-hmm. He's always, even being as close as, as living in my neighborhood and being all of 2 minutes away. Mm-hmm. Even there was a point where he even lived 2 blocks away from us. Mm-hmm. He was always distant. And even no more so now that he even completely distanced himself physically from us. We don't get those phone calls, or even when we call, it's very quick to ask for something and hang up. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think he knows how.
Yeah.
I don't think he's ever taught himself, and I'm not sure maybe he wants to, he just doesn't know how, or I don't know where his headspace is.
I think maybe he does want to, and I think maybe he just doesn't know how.
Maybe.
Because I remember getting those birthday calls from my dad, and I was like, hey, te quería decir feliz cumpleaños. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, gracias, pa. And okay, no, nomás quería decir feliz cumpleaños. And I'm like, okay, gracias, pa. And then we would hang up.
Yeah.
But it was nice that he always remembered.
Yeah.
So it was like, like even though it was just a phone call, it was just like, maybe a minute or two. Yeah. It was still nice that, that there was that intention.
Yeah. Jesus. Oh goodness. Okay. Yeah, that's nice, and that's nice to hear that, Juan. I think that's an incredible experience to have. And like I said, I've had those experiences. Oh my goodness. I've had those like close experiences with a male role model, father figure, was with my uncle, and I think, I think that's where, that's where my energy flows when I think of like a father figure. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I'll get to know my dad as a person if he allows it, and if time permitting, and all of that stuff.
Yeah. No, I think it's worth it. I think it's like, it's like what they say, let bygones be bygones, and
definitely
move on and take advantage of the time that you do have now.
Yeah.
Because I think, you don't ever get time back, regardless.
Yeah. I think, okay. breathe. Okay, oh my God. I want to,
how do we go from arguing?
I don't know how we got here. Jesus heavens, why did you? Hey, this is Angelica. Welcome to the Juan of Words podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, YouTube, juanofwords.com. If you listen to an episode and you like what you hear, leave us a review or maybe a comment or two. We hope you enjoy this episode. Okay. And we're back. Okay. Wanted to switch it up really quick. And talk about a little bit about the relationships that maybe we have with our moms. I think it's a telling sign of like who we are. Because me, like you, have dedicated a lot of time to our mothers. We still do so now. Oh, do you want to start, or should I?
No, go ahead.
I'm still worked up over here about the whole,
No. I guess, my relationship with my mom has always been like, I've always like, she's always been the person that, comforts. She's always been the person that, offers advice to me. She's always been, that person that's just a rock, to me. Yeah. So to me, like, I feel like I have a really strong relationship with her. And, but at the same time, I guess this maybe explains my relationship with my mom. Like when I was going through the doctor, and like I was trying to, like, I didn't know what was going to happen, like if I had something or not. Yeah. I didn't tell her when I was going through it, but afterwards I did tell her, because I was like,
what did she say?
She was just like, at first she was just kind of shocked. She was just kind of like, she didn't ask me any questions, which I thought was weird. She just kind of looked at me. I was like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah. And then she called me a few days later and she was like, so you were in the hospital and you didn't tell me? And I was like, no, I was not in the hospital. I just went to get tests. I was like, but I feel that's my relationship with my mom. I was like, I feel like I would tell her, like, I feel like I need to tell her.
Yeah.
Because, you know, if I didn't, I feel she would be hurt.
Yeah.
That I didn't tell her, like, oh, like, you know, they thought that I might have something and I went and I got all these tests done. Even if I don't have anything.
Yeah.
Like, I think, like, I think, not that only because she would get hurt, but I feel like, you know, I feel like she deserves that, you know, to know.
Yeah.
So, like, if I would go to the hospital, like, I would be like, okay, call my mom and tell her that I'm in the hospital.
Yeah.
But that would be like, I think that, I don't know if that explains my relationship, but there's like, I feel like, you know, I owe her that, you know, to let her know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if I answered your question, but
the relationship you have. No, you did. You definitely answered. I think the relationship that I have with my mom is something similar to that. But I feel like me and my mom, today, we are very much tied. We're woven together. Our lives are woven together. I live a block away from my mom. She often calls me when there's a situation or something's wrong. I sometimes take care of her finances. I do like all the back end of things a lot of the time. Take her to appointments to the doctor, make the appointments, all of that stuff. Like, our lives are to the point where I started going to the doctor at the same clinic that she was going to, because it was just easier. I would tell her when I would make a doctor's appointment, she'd be like, yeah, me too. Make it for me too. And I did that on purpose. I found a good doctor in the same clinic and I was happy, and I'm not moving from there because she goes there. And so I want to keep tabs on her, and I want to make sure like how things are run in the back end of. So we're definitely very much woven in together.
Yeah.
That wasn't always the case though.
Yeah.
Dun 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 dun. That wasn't always the case. And like I said earlier, my mom worked graveyard shifts, which means she would leave to work at night. She would have to be at work by 10, and then she would come back home, and she would be home back by around 7 o'clock in the morning. And this was Monday through Friday. She was married. And my stepdad would be the one to stay home, and he would lock himself in a room, and I would not see of him at all, ever. Weekends would come around and they would leave. They'd kind of go do their own thing. And the older I got, the less they would involve me. It was like the less and less and less, like they just didn't have to worry about me. So I was very much like running my own shift of life and stuff. And there was groceries at the house and the lights were on. There was a roof over my head, you know what I mean? But I didn't really have a relationship with my mom then. I never resented her. She was just kind of, I always thought that I was just gonna eventually just like move away and be done with it. Like I didn't think I was gonna stick around the way I'm sticking around now.
Yeah.
And so when I turned 16, her and her husband, they were fixing a house that my mom had moved over to the lot that they're in now. They had torn down the garage. They moved in a house. They started to fix it up. And when I turned 16, like right around the age of 16, they moved into that house. They moved into the house. I still live next door.
So you were neighbors.
Basically. We were very close neighbors. We lived in the same lot. I never, like, I didn't have a room in their house. They had an extra bedroom, but I didn't have a room in that house. Nobody got to stay there with them. And that was the hard part. I would go in, when I would try at least to go in. And I remember just like, I always had to be like aware of like when I was in that house, like their house,
Aware like what?
Aware of like even to the point where like the food they kept. it was their things.
So it was clear that it wasn't your house and you weren't.
Yeah, not that I wasn't invited, but it was not my house. My house was the house next door where.
But whatever
where
you ate,
I grew up.
like whatever you were eating, whatever you were doing, it was like you were eating
their food
out of their refrigerator. You were eating out of their like things.
Yeah, I don't know why I bring up food. I think because around that time is I knew what. The only time I've ever like been hungry, physically hungry, was then. And I don't think it was on purpose. I think it's just that, you know, the way things just like played out. I remember being at that great house and feeling hungry and there was nothing to eat. And I didn't have a key to the house next door. I couldn't walk over there and like get food. And so, and she was having a really bad relationship with him around this time. It was hard for her. And so I think she tried to do everything to like, you know, to fix it. And it's easier to fix a relationship when you don't have like anybody else in it, right? Including kids. I had basically aged out at 16. And, but yeah, I think one of the most memorable moments was then I remember just being hungry and having nothing, like not even like, not even like 25 cents to go buy like a maruchan. And I was like, what the hell is this? What is this? And I remember like I could depend on my friends to like feed me, you know, I would never go hungry because of my friends. I would never go hungry because of the guys I dated. But I just remember being like there and just thinking like, I don't have a job. There's nothing that I can do to help myself. Right. And so, that's kind of like where that situation like all started. Like, I still remember like being little, maybe around 10 or something. And, my stepdad would say things like, if you don't want to get left behind, you need to be ready at a certain time because we're going to leave. I was like, what? Okay. I'm like, whatever. And I remember one time, they left. They left me there at home by myself. They left me there home by myself the entire day. I mean, there was food. They still hadn't moved over. But that was kind of it. She just kind of like went with it. And I resented her for that, for like going with it along with him, whatever that was. I remember sometimes she would say things like, and my sister confronts her about this too. She would say things like, like I can leave. And this is not by word, but it was something around the realm of this, where she would say things like, nomás me quiero ir, me quiero largar, nomás me quiero ir, me quiero largar. And I'd be like, what? Like, what do you mean you just want to leave and like leave? What the fuck does that mean? Yeah, she would say things like that, like, you know, just want to leave and whatever. But the thing with that was that she would say immediately after that she would tell me like, oh, he wants to move away, move out. And he keeps telling me that he wants to go buy a house somewhere and that we, you know, to sell this house to go buy a house somewhere. But there was always the insinuation that she was going to leave, like without us. And that she would say things like, well, no, this house belongs to my kids. But she was willing to leave. And I think in a way she kind of did that when she moved into the house next door. And I wasn't.
But maybe that was her compromise.
I wasn't invited. Huh?
But maybe that was her compromise to keep her marriage going. It was to like to say, you know what? Okay, I'll give you that we move into a house together, but I'm not going to leave my kids abandoned. I'm not going to sell the house. That's for them.
Yeah.
And in hindsight, it was a good thing that she didn't, because, you know, after they separated, she still has her house. Yeah,
she still does. He left her. He left her. Like I said, they had a difficult relationship. Yeah, you know, to the end of like the last 5 years. The last, you know, wow. I think in reality he got what he wanted from the relationship, and he kind of just left and didn't turn back. And it was what it was. And I think my mom in partly got fooled I mean, but I get it, but I don't get it. You know what I mean? Like, now that I'm grown, I understand that she was working. She didn't have that relationship with my father. It was a terrible relationship she had with my dad, you know, and she just wanted a good relationship. Like, she wanted to be loved the way she deserved to be loved. And unfortunately, he kind of like manipulated her.
And I think sometimes maybe it's the fact that if she had issues with your dad, and like they were maybe those issues carried over into you know, where she didn't have like the self value, or the like to like not put up with certain things, or to not like you know, maybe that was part of it, you know, that she didn't know what a healthy relationship looked like. Maybe if this
probably.
Relationship was better than the last one, but it wasn't like, maybe it wasn't the healthy relationship.
And she says that. She'll say that. Wanted. To this day, she still says things like, "Oh, he did this or he did that." Like, he didn't like she was physically abused in her relationship with my dad. Like, I mean, horrible stories. My stepdad never raised an arm to my mom, and for my mom, that was a win. And so she felt like it was worth, you know, fighting for, to save that relationship by whatever means. And so, I mean, it wasn't like she wasn't, I mean, I'm not saying she wasn't doing this bad, but it was, you know, in a way, it felt like being abandoned. You know what I mean? Like, I was constantly feeling like I was being left, you know, by my mom, who was still there for me, and she still gave me guidance as much as she could. But I feel like at some point she became more of like, she was my mom / aunt / sister. You know what I mean? Like, there was, and I know what my mom is now, years later, because she's dedicated and devoted like that now. And that's not who she was then. That wasn't her priority. And so I think now that I think back on it, she never ever has to ever ask me for forgiveness. I never expected that. But when I was going through depression, my God, I dug in deep to my mom. I confronted her about all of it. I told her things that you should never tell your mother. I feel bad, you know, but I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle it. Like, she was it, you know, for me. You know, even feeling like I had been abandoned, she was still my mom, and I, like the little puppy who was constantly seeking their mother's attention. And that's how, like, and now, like, I feel like she is giving me what I've always wanted. And she has been doing so. Maybe since we've been fixing our relationship for the last 10 years. I can definitely say that, like, I've always adored my mom. I've always held her to high regard. Always, because this is the person that I knew. But I feel like she now tries. I feel like the way your dad shifted and changed, like, that's been my mom. And she has done an incredible shift in her life. Incredible shift. And so it allowed her to, in part, have a relationship with my sister, Erica, who passed away. And Erica and her, like, had it out too, and my sister confronted her also, you know, about a lot of the things that happened to her. And after she left that toxic relationship with my stepdad, you know, I don't know if it was her self-awareness, but she opened her eyes. And she's allowed for conversation. And I think even one of my older sisters who's have issues with my mom has now like not confronted her, but told her like, this is my life and this is the way I live my life, and I never wanted to tell you this, but I'm telling you now. And I think my older sister is a little more aggressive about it. And I feel like she's, you know, getting there with, I think they are kind of like working on their relationship right now. But yeah, my mom had an opportunity to work on the relationship she had with my sister, which is, I'm grateful for. I'm beyond grateful that my mom was able to see my sister for who she was. And kind of recognize, you know, what part my mom took in it also.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is one of the ones where I just, like I told, like my mom is my mom. Like my mom, like I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think like nobody knows, like I think as parents, like you don't know like how, you don't realize the mistakes you're making in the moment. You don't realize them until later. And I think that's like part of life is like, you know, because I think there are things that we've done that I'm like, oh, you know, like I wish that we would have done things differently, you know, in a way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know down the line like how that's gonna come back to us.
Yeah.
And you know, I feel like
I get parenting tips from my mom. She'll tell me, she'll yell at me. She'll be like, don't talk to him like that.
Yeah.
Like, what? You talk to me
like,
worse.
But it's not, yeah, like sometimes it's the way you talk, but sometimes it's just the actions that you do.
Yeah, she tells me that too.
And you don't realize like sometimes that kids will pick up, or the things that will stay with kids are the littlest like thing, and like, or the memory that you think was nothing, that you don't even recollect, that you don't even like, and that will be impacting to them.
Yeah, I think,
and to me, like that's what I think is like, I think like you don't know. There's no instruction guide for parents, so I think you do the best you can, and you know, I don't say not to say that to make an excuse and say, you know, oh well, you know, everybody does the best they can, but I think the thing is like when you have siblings, like each relationship is different, and I think that parents, like as a parent, like you get to like learn from each of your kids, with the relationship that you have from each of your kids, and then maybe from that you get to like apply and grow like with the rest of your kids.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that's like, because maybe your mom talking to you like made her like realize certain things, and so when she was able to talk to Erica, she was coming from a different headspace because she had already gone through it with you.
Yeah, she did. And
so now going through with your other sister, like she's already been through 2 rounds with you guys.
Yeah.
So like, I think she like maybe the timing is right for them to like now. Yeah. Have those conversations. Yeah. And I think that's what it is. Sometimes is that you have to have like you know, it's like that there's like a purpose, because that's why, like, you know, when things happen or whatever, and you know, like I guess each relationship is individual, even though they're all your kids. Like each one of them, you can learn from them.
Yeah, I definitely know that they're going through it. My sister, around this, you know, during this world event of the pandemic, she's the one that has been like looking after my mom more. Like, you know, getting her groceries, getting things that she needs, running errands for her and stuff like that. Things that I can't do because I don't drive. She's been the one to like do all of that stuff. And so, yeah, they're definitely working on it. I think one of the greatest advices that I ever gotten wasn't necessarily from somebody, but I picked it up watching the Oprah show. They were having a show about kids. I think one of the things, excuse me, I'm so sorry, I'm crying, so I got the moco. I think one of the things that she said was, I think there was a therapist or something like that on the show. Anyway, that person said something that stuck with me forever, was that when you see a kid in a room or walk into a room, recognize them, always recognize them. And one of the ways that you can recognize them, you don't even have to say anything, is by looking at them and smiling and saying hi. And that makes a world of a difference to a kid when you recognize them, because sometimes some adults like tend to like overlook children by like not saying hi, because you're there to visit sometimes adults, so you don't want to waste your time with the kids, because I mean, you're not trying to be the friend of the kid, but you don't have to be the friend of the kid. All you have to do is just recognize that the kid is actually there and smile and say hi. And that makes a difference for children when they realize they know, when they're noticed. And so I've always done that from that moment on. Is just recognize all the kids, smile at them, and if they need something, sometimes, and it makes them comfortable to talk to you too, and which in then turn creates actual personalities in them that they know how to conversate, growing up with other kids or with other adults, if necessary. And so I think, it's nice to know and to think that you're kind of being part of that personality that they're eventually, that character they're going to grow into, by simply like acknowledging the children that are there in the room. When a child walks into a room, or you walk into a room and there's a child there, you say hi to all of them. But yeah, I think why did I say that? Oh, that was just here you go, this is a tip.
This is a tip.
A tip for you guys. But the relationship that my sister and my mom are having right now, I think my sister has been wanting it for a very long time. I think my sister has always wanted that relationship with my mom. She's always had a very rough one with her, and they've been fighting. Like, they fought over it for such a long time. My mom never admitted to things. My sister never allowed my mom to like think about it, to be in that, whatever that was. My sister was just like, my sister, you know what I mean? I don't want to get into that because that's their relationship, but yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's good. And when you said earlier that that you didn't know what it was like, that you didn't have food, and I was like, man, that's one thing I've never experienced, is like, even though we were really poor, like, we all somehow my mom always managed to like have plenty of food for us. Like, we always had we had beans, we had
something
like in the valley. She grew like quilites, and we would eat that with eggs, and we always figured something out. Even if it was tortillas, like it was salt, and that's what you ate. But it was like we always had food, and so
I remember trying to make that house next door to my mom's my own. Nobody lived there. It was just me, and everything was like. Wasn't the best, and then they try to fix it up at one moment to like make it better, but so it wasn't to the point that I was this went on until I got pregnant, right? So I was in and out of that house, living in one of the rooms, and they were trying to fix the room, but I still didn't have like anywhere to go. Like, I wasn't homeless, but I didn't have like my own, like I had my own space, but it wasn't a home. I remember trying to make that space my own space. Like, I try to like put little things in there. Like, when I had jobs, I would try to put like little things to like canisters for like rice and beans and sugar, and I couldn't afford like things that to go with it, like to cook with it. You hear that mumbling? I'm so sorry if you can pick that up in the sound, but that's the kid playing games in his other room. But yeah, so we would, I would try to keep like as much things as I could. And I remember one time I went to the panaderia, with the bakery, and I bought some like conchas. And I didn't know that they go stale, like if they're not sealed right. Yeah. And I remember in one of those canisters, I put like a few conchas in there. So, so I could, because conchas were like cheap. They're like 35 cents a piece of bread. Yeah. And then I put them in there, and then I went and I like left my house the way I usually did for like a couple of days, and then I would come back, because I was like homesick and just to recharge or whatever, and I would come back. And I remember one of those, I came back and I went to go downstairs and I like went to go to see what I can eat, and I was like, that's right, I brought conchas. And I went and I tried to eat those poor conchas.
They're all nasty.
Completely stale. So I just picked the sugar off.
Oh.
But and then if I was really hungry, I would have to wait till the next day to like go into my mom's house and ask for permission or ask if I could eat this. And that's when people come into my house and I tell everybody this, and this is why I tell you what. When people come into my house, like, I don't care, whatever's in my fridge, have it. Whatever's in my cup, like my pantry, anything edible you want, you eat. Like I don't care. I don't care. And it's happened. Like my nieces and nephews, they'll come like, he's like, what happened to all the damn grapes? And they came by. I don't know what to tell you. Like a bunch of hungry kids came and ate. I love it. And I like that. I like when they come to my house and they feel completely comfortable opening like my pantry, my fridge, like eat it. Whatever is there that you can eat, you eat. And that's why I tell like you and Edgar, don't become attached to any of the food is here, because if somebody else gets to it, they get to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've never been attached to food like that, because it's like we always like in our house, it was always like if you were there, you were eating with us. So
yeah.
It was never
but you know how sometimes
there was never separation. Like it was always like if you come to our house, you knew you were gonna eat. Like, because my mom was always gonna
she was gonna feed you.
She was gonna feed you. Like
yeah, I can attest to that.
She would get offended if you didn't eat. She was like, oh, yeah, they don't want my food. Like,
no, it's not that I don't want your food. It's like, I just ate. I'm full. No, but like even how sometimes you bring home food from like takeout, and sometimes they'll like write their name on it.
Oh, I never did that, and I've never liked bringing home food from takeout anyway, because I'm like it's not, you're not gonna eat it anay. I
eat
it's
it.
A waste.
Look, as somebody who knows how to,
I'd rather eat it all at the restaurant.
No,
be done with it.
No. Like I love takeout. Like I love bringing home food. Like I don't care. I eat people's takeout. Yeah,
because the only place I've experienced that was at work, like at working at places, and where people would label their food and they would get so offended if like somebody ate it, and I'm like, and I never ate other people's food, but I was wondering like, why did they get so offended by that? Like it's maybe somebody was just really hungry. Yeah, and that's what I'm always afraid, that somebody's gonna be around me and be hungry. And they would just be like, I mean, some people would just get so like to the point where like, I mean, I get being mad, like, oh, I had a sandwich there, it was mine, I was gonna eat it, like I would be mad, yeah, like okay, you can be mad, but like to the point where it was like
so upset you had to send an email
where it was like sending like somebody ate my blah 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 blah, or like they would just like start like a whole like thing about it, and I was like, okay, that's excessive, like just take something out of like get a Maruchan out of the thing and eat that, and like calm down. Yeah. Or like make a sandwich with peanut butter, that the community peanut butter, and you can eat that immediately. Yeah. Or drive down the street and get something and you'll be good. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, but that is one of my biggest fears, is somebody being around me and being hungry. Yeah. I don't ever want that to like happen around me, and that's why I hear when you especially, and Edgar, you're like, yeah, there's nothing to eat. I was like, there's plenty of food to eat. No, trust me, y'all don't know what hunger looks like until you've been hungry. There's food. I promise you, there's food. And I've been able to stretch out our meals. I've been able to keep it down. You look into the fridge and you don't see anything, and I see possibilities endless. And so I'll make food, and you're like, you see, why couldn't you do that? And I'm like, no, why couldn't you do that? Because I don't know. Yeah. And it's made me creative too.
I don't have that imagination.
It's made me creative.
I want meat. I want the things that I can
protein, carbs, veggies, or beans.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
All right. So I'm happy. I'm happy we ended it on a light mood. I'm happy we're here. I'm happy we're stopping here. Yeah. So yeah, did you like the conversation though? Just a quick question. Did you?
Yeah. I mean, I think it went good. I was like,
we started off rough, huh?
Yeah, I think we started out fighting, and then we ended up like somehow.
Welcome to the Juan Words podcast, where we fight and we make up immediately.
But no. No, I think this is a good one. And again, welcome to season 2.
Yeah,
welcome
definitely.
to season 2. We'll see what else is down the pipe. But I mean, this was an intense one to kind of like.
Yeah, it was.
going with.
And if you stuck around long enough to hear this, let us know what you think. Maybe there is something that you can interpret yourself, or maybe give us your definition of where you've ever experienced any form of fear, embarrassment, or shame. And give us a comment. We really hope you enjoy this one.
Yeah. And as you said, if you want to leave us a rating and a review, we would really appreciate it on Apple iTunes. You can do that on Apple iTunes, and it really helps us just to be more visible on the platform. And other than that, if you want to follow us, just follow us everywhere. We're at Juan of Words on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Yeah. And with that one, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
You know I had to do it. Had to. You back up on your bullshit, don't belong to me. You acting all sleazy, I don't like what I see. I got all the game, don't get fucked in your brain. I can do you worse than you ever